I just said recording in progress. That will give them that additional training that they need to do their personal best, to become stronger, to become more confident. They're still going to have to work hard, right? Just because you have that coach alongside of you, improvement takes effort, but they're going to have the support that they need and that safe training ground to work at it. So I want you to think of ST Math as that additional training that students need to build their strength, to build their conceptual understanding. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort and energy, but like a good coach, we're going to meet our students where they're at, whether they're struggling or they're high achieving. ST Math is going to help them, give them that advantage. So today we're going to talk about how you can use ST Math to make that impact like a good coach does, helping their runners compete in a race. And I'm going to warn you that when I come up with an analogy, I go all in. And so we're just going to embrace this running analogy and use it throughout our time together today. All right, so I do have a slide deck, and I'm going to go ahead and where is it? Share my screen, and I'm going to share the correct screen and make sure I can see my chat again. Oh, thanks, Tracy. Glad you liked it. I thought it helped me kind of envision what ST Math is. So here we go, our race. This is me. I'm Amy. I'm coming to you from St. Paul, Minnesota. We are a frozen tundra where this morning an actual quote from my husband was, "Oh, look, it's only -11 outside." And those words should never be spoken. I don't know why we live here. I am a former teacher and instructional coach, currently working as the manager of professional learning at Mind, where I have the incredible privilege of helping teachers and students change. Oh, you guys can see my screen, right? You see my face. I think I did that right. Okay, good. Thank you, Danny. Where I get the privilege to help teachers and students change how they feel about math every single day. I have the best job in the world. I wanted to share with you that I consider myself to be sort of an ongoing recovery from crippling math anxiety as a student and as a young adult, right through when I became a teacher. I didn't become a teacher to teach math. I did it because I loved reading. Interesting how I ended up at Mind. But that was sort of brought about by, I think, two things. One, timed math tests. And two, I was told as an 11-year-old after taking a standardized test that my verbal skills were off the charts, but that I was really poor at spatial reasoning and math. And I embraced that and spent the next decade thinking that I was just bad at math and trying not to let people see that I still sometimes had to count on my fingers to do addition. And all of that actually changed for me when I started teaching. I taught 4th grade for my first teaching experience, and I realized that I was learning math right alongside my students. Math instruction had changed by that point. And so I remember when I first taught fractions, and I called my mom and went, "Mom, I taught fractions to my students today, and I get fractions. I never understood what they were before," and really changing that narrative. So I am passionate about changing the narrative around math for teachers. If you're like me, there's lots of them out there, and for sure for students. So for today's session, a little background about me. For today's session, we're going to unpack that using data to make an impact. And we're going to try using a tool, Poll Everywhere. I need you to get out your phone. I don't know, here's mine. Get out your phone, scan the code on the screen. That'll get you connected to our, here, and I'm going to do it too. So I make sure that, oh, there, I already did, that I can see what you guys see. And Danny's also going to put a link in the chat if you prefer to click a link to do this, but it's helpful sometimes to do it on your phone so you can see my presentation, you can answer on your phone. And let's just take a minute and get to know each other. You guys got to know me a little bit. And here's our first one. So I'm curious who we have in the room. What is your role? If you can answer that. And if you're a mind colleague, you can be something else, I think, or you can decide, I guess, what your role is. And we've got, all right, a lot of coaches in the room. Awesome, welcome. You all can make such a huge, all of you can make an impact, but coaches, as a former instructional coach, like Y'all make the world go round. Cool, so that's kind of the majority. And the next level is district leaders. You all are welcome. Thank you for being here. That helps me know who I'm talking to. And here's our agenda for today. I kind of have two main things we're going to do. The first one is sort of the reason that you came with the title is what is the key to making an impact with ST Math? I'm going to make the argument that there's one main key that needs to happen. There's a lot of benefits, but one thing that you need to do in order to kind of set the ball rolling. And then I want it to be super practical. I want you to have some tools you can walk away with to make that impact, to start down that road. If you haven't already, or maybe to add to what you are already doing. So if you maybe hopped in late, you missed that first question, here it is again. We're gonna get to know each other a little bit better. Let's see here, there it is. Hopefully you're still connected. I know what your role is. How familiar are you with ST Math? And you can sort of decide in the middle where you fall, but anywhere from, this is brand new to me, that's why you're here, is you're learning, to, I don't know, I think I see some of my team members, my trainers on the call, so you'd probably be an expert. We got a 33% right smack dab in the middle. A couple of brand new folks, cool. Okay, we're all across the board. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for answering that. I already warned you, we're gonna keep going back to my race analogy. So Gigi, as I said, if you missed kind of my beginning story, we're thinking of Gigi, ST Math, as that coach alongside our students, training them, challenging them, helping them to grow. So there goes Gigi. And we're gonna start with data. So let's look at the race results, if you will. And some of you maybe are familiar with this particular piece of data. We use it in quite a few trainings, and if we're talking with folks who are interested in purchasing ST Math. But just because it's familiar doesn't make it any less compelling. So I want you to take a moment, just look at what you see on the screen. What is this showing you? Type it out in the chat. What is your takeaway when you look at this graph? I'm not just going to tell you what the graph is showing you. Michael got it. Growth, right? Consistently. Ooh, you guys are drawing out some of the keyword on that page that we're going to talk about. Growth, consistency, right? Gigi, is this a successful coach? Yes, absolutely. So I love all of those kind of takeaways from the graph. I think it's really important to realize this is a study with 42,000 students. So stick with my analogy, that's a lot of runners in this race. And we found, of course, that there's this huge amount of growth that happened. And you see that in their schools that used ST Math consistently. And so I know that if you already are using ST Math, it is because you want this kind of impact. If you're interested, you're like, okay, how can I do that, right? And we want to give students that advantage as they run their race. So what is the key here? And some of you latched onto that word consistently. So the key, hang on, grand reveal, is really simple. You need to use it, right? It seems too simple, but these are schools that use ST Math consistently and with fidelity, and they watch their students have that kind of growth and get really stronger in math. So of course, there are so many other things that we can do to help our students be successful. I'm not like minimizing the impact of like teachers who are the biggest change agents in the classroom, and coaches and administrators and good leadership. All of those things are super important. Strong pedagogy, opportunities to experience math in different ways. All of these things are super important. But our session today is on that data that tells us what makes a difference in terms of ST Math, and it really is that simple. You have to use it. If you don't use ST Math, you're not going to see that kind of impact. And seen, we can all leave. No, I'm going to unpack that a little bit more and help you. Looks like somebody needs to get in the meeting to try to help you understand the why and then understand the how. And I might be mixing my metaphors a little bit here, but bear with me. I'm sure you know what we're doing here. If I'm sticking with my running theme, you can see where I'm going. Before moving over to the professional learning side at Mind, I was one of our education success managers. And I remember working with a district who was frustrated, and they said, well, why aren't we seeing a difference? They'd done their state assessment, and they're like, we really expected to see bigger gains this year. Why isn't it working? And as a success manager, it's like, oh, shoot, okay, they're not being successful. Like, what can we figure out? And we started digging into their data, and we found out that they were averaging 20 minutes per week. Okay. So sure, like they were using it, right? Maybe their treadmill, if we're going to stick with our analogy, wasn't completely out of commission. But it's sort of like wanting to run a marathon, but only walking 1 mile a day and hoping that, you're going to have that kind of impact that you'll be able to run that race, right? With their treadmill was not being utilized the way that it should. So the really annoying thing, if any of you are runners out there, the really annoying thing about training and running is that you have to put in the regular work, right, in order to see those results. So we need to uncover the treadmill, get it out, and then we need to start having some consistency. So the formula is simple. Use ST Math consistently with fidelity. We saw that one in that kind of first data slide that we looked at. When we do that, you're going to start seeing the progress through the ST Math curriculum. You're going to see students having that visual spatial instruction in their grade level math standards. And when they're able to experience math in that way, that's when you see that increased proficiency that you're looking for. So we're going to look at another piece of data, another graph, and I always need a moment to, again, as kind of recovering from my math anxiety, a minute to process a graph. So I want to give you a moment to kind of look at this a different way. So look at this graph to make sense of it. And I want you to share again what you see. The only thing I'm going to say before I'm quiet for like 30 seconds is notice that the horizontal axis down here, that it's showing grade level ST Math content completion. So like right here, they finished less than 25% of their ST Math, like 3rd grade or 4th grade at their curriculum, right? Here they finished 25 to 50%, right? So it's quartiles of completion. Take a moment. What do you see? What is this graph showing you? I'm really good at wait time too. Former 4th grade teacher right here. There we go. It's always like right when I'm like, no one is here, nobody's going to answer, that they all pop through. So greatest gains are at least 75%. PJ, the more students complete, the better they understand math. Interesting, right? That when you say it out loud is really logical. The more they do, the more they grow, more progress is better. You got it. So more use, better progress. That's a great summary of it. So the results are really clear, just like y'all noticed, that completing more ST Math curriculum led to like, not just like, oh yeah, it improved, like it was dramatic, the results that students had when they completed more of the curriculum. So at the very bottom of that slide, you can see that kind of that effect size of 0.25 or greater is designated as, what is it now? Substantively important. So we're seeing over there on the far right, 0.63, right? That is like really, really significant, kind of blew that out of the water. And the cool thing is that we know that all students can master and complete the entire ST Math curriculum if given sufficient time. That's that important keyword that we're going to keep coming back to again and again, is that time is really important. It's also a commodity that's limited in the classroom. So, and we're really careful about it, but it's a really important component to reaching that 75 to 100% completion. So creating that implementation plan for your school that maximizes those minutes spent in ST Math are really going to give you that result. Before getting to the sort of how and giving us some strategies, I do want to unpack why a little bit. So what is happening when students are completing that content, and why is it so effective? Why do we see these kinds of results? There's other sessions like Nigel's that he does a great job unpacking that much better than I can, but I do want to highlight something that I think is really important to think about. To do so, I'm going to come to a quote from, I'm sure that there's someone that I should have Googled this before that actually like officially said this, but I had a college professor who always would say this when in class, that whoever's working is doing the learning. And the sister kind of quote that he would say is whoever's doing the talking is doing the learning, which I didn't like that one as well, because I really like to talk. But the one working is the one learning. The one working is the one learning. Yes, I said that right. So again, time is important, but we also need those minutes to be productive, right? To go back to my analogy, that if you clear the treadmill and start walking on it, but you only walk at 1 mile per hour and you're not challenging yourself, you're not going any faster or longer, you're not going to get any faster or stronger. So we need our students to be working. And how often in our classrooms are the teachers the ones that are doing the most work? Oh, thank you. PJ found he's giving me, he's citing my quote there. I appreciate it. How often are teachers the ones that are working the hardest in the classroom? And it's really important to give them tools that will put that load on the students, that they're the ones that are working really hard, that they're the ones that are doing that really important work of learning. So to kind of have a different visual of what this is, we've established already, I think I've driven this point home, we got minutes, right? If we get in their minutes, you're going to see that they're going to go through the content, they'll get through their curriculum, hopefully to 75 to 100%. And then that's when you're going to see that growth. A really important piece to think about here, and why it's so powerful, is that students are the ones that are providing all the power. They're the ones that are putting in all of the work. The teacher needs to provide the space. Administrators need to provide the leadership to value that we're giving it the time that we need. But students are the ones that are doing the hard work. And that's what we want, because when students are working, that's when they're going to be learning. So teachers are such an important component, but we really want the students to be providing that muscle power to, there you go, gotta get that visual, to get that whole engine humming. So we'll unpack, we've kind of unpacked why it's so valuable. Let's address for a moment, and I have this picture of our students on screen, because fairly frequently when I'm doing training, I hear teachers or parents who are like, but Amy, what about too much screen time? Like, aren't we worried about them spending too much time on screens? And I do really think that that's a valid question, but I think that there's also a better question, that instead of thinking, are they getting too much screen time? Maybe the right question is the time they're spending on screens valuable? What are they doing when they're on screens, right? Is their brain working? Is it actually having to engage in that problem solving? And not all screen time is created equal. And we know that, right? That's nothing new to you. But I want to show you what I mean by that. And I think this visual will like help you see why this screen time is maybe a little bit different. So this is actually a slide that we use in our intro training to talk about using manipulatives, but I want to use it for something different right now. I want you to take a moment, look at these 3 photos of students, and type in the chat one word to describe what you see. What word comes to mind when you look at those 3 photos? And, oh, here they all come popping through. Now scroll back up, read through what your fellow participants here. I'm going to scroll to. Oh gosh, it's hard to get to the beginning. There we go. Engaged, doing, hands-on, thinking, lots of engaged. choice, ooh, active learners, happy, I love that. Conceptual, processing, yeah, all of these words. When I look at these pictures, especially these two little girls on the left, it's like you can see their brains working. Like when you say, I think about those like gears turning, like I can almost visualize their brains really processing, right? There's a screen in front of them, absolutely. They have a puzzle there that they're trying to solve, but they're using a math tool, they're using their brains. You can tell that they're really trying to figure out this puzzle, this problem that they're working on. That the time that's being spent there, I would hesitate to even call it screen time because they're engaging in it so deeply. And so I think, yep, screen time, but does it look valuable? Like I would argue that it does. Ooh, that is my hint to myself to say, Amy, look at the time. Have you been talking too much and how are we doing? We're just on schedule. So yay. So we are going to shift a little bit from what is the key. And let's remember, do you remember that golden key? What did we say that the key was to making that impact? What do you need to do? See if I'm getting my point across. Can we answer the question? Use it. Give them the time. Yes. Spend time. You got it. So the key is that you need to use it. There's lots of other things that fall under that, right? But that's sort of the point that gets the ball rolling. So time to do the work. Consistent, productive. Love it. So now we're going to shift to what tools can I give you to help you make that impact? Now, I'd love it if I could just magically, have my wand and give you 20 extra minutes every day to do ST Math. I don't have that, but I do have some ideas that can help you. So the first tool, it does seem really obvious, but I almost feel a little silly even mentioning it, but I think that since this whole session is about using data to make an impact, then we need to make sure that you know what data points you should be looking for, right? Like, I want to make sure that that's clear. And for some of you, just remind you of what we're looking for. So the first thing we'll need to do is set some expectations. So this is our graphic that shows our usage recommendations. These are per week. So 60 minutes for K1. And what is it? For second and up, it's 90 minutes. And these numbers are based on the average amount of time that students need, the time an average student would need to complete their grade level curriculum. I used to joke with teachers when I did more training that we didn't come up with these recommended minutes just to stress them out. Because as soon as I put this up on the screen, you can imagine teachers' eyes get big and they're like, I don't have 90 minutes. Like, I hardly, have enough time to get through the curriculum that I have. So I like to give a little context for that the amount of time is really based on the average student. If they're given that amount of time, will be able to complete their grade level curriculum, which if we think back to that other graph we saw, we want to get to that 75 to 100% range to get that biggest impact. That's an important component. There's going to be some students who are faster. They're going to finish much more quickly. Some are going to be slower. And in order to reach that 75 to 100% curriculum completion, they're going to need more than 60 or 90 minutes. That's the reality of being in education, right? Is that there's so many variables with students. But minutes are going to be that first step. So this is a good place to start. Let's get practical. And in just a moment, you're going to need your phone again. I'm going to come back to my poll everywhere, and we'll actually look at some data. So this is a fake ST Math class, and this is at a school level report. We have this exact same looking report that would be at the district level. Like if you zoomed out and instead of showing teachers here along the left, you could show schools, right? Like, and you could see the same data. So this can apply, or you could zoom down, and if I clicked on a teacher, you'd see the same data for an individual student. So you can zoom up and down, it doesn't matter, and it looks the same. So a report like this can be a little bit overwhelming. So if we're picking that time as our metric we're going to focus on, so we're going to look at last week's minutes if I'm an administrator or a coach and I'm going to want to start kind of setting and paying attention to that expectation. So I'm going to look at last week's, let me wiggle, there it is, last week's minutes. And if I was live, which I'm not, this is a screenshot, I could click on that heading and make it really easy for myself and like, you know, sort it from greatest to least or least to greatest. But I didn't think to do that when I took my screenshot. So before I have you interact with this and identify, kind of do this task, let's remember, what are the expectations again for K1 students? How many minutes are we looking for? Rebecca got it, she's quick, 60 minutes. And then grades 2 and up. Somebody will give it to us, 90. Okay, so you've got your cheat sheet in the chat over there, right? So if you forget what you're looking for, you can look over there. So I'm going to put this up again. So if you lost it with your phone, if your the poll everywhere is still open, you don't need to scan it again. It'll use the same one, but maybe you popped in late. Go ahead and scan that again. And Danny, maybe you can stick the link to it in the chat again if folks have joined us. So I'm going to now click to this. What I want you to do, and one tip is it might be helpful if you turn your phone like this and you can zoom in. There are 4 classes who met their minutes last week. So you can tap on those 4 classes and it'll like drop a little pin. Oh, and here we go. You can see the pins will start coming in up on the screen. What are the 4 classes who they met their minutes? And you've got the cheat sheet in the chat too. So, or I guess it's probably over there for you. 60 minutes for K1 and 90 minutes for grades 2 and up. Oh, and some of you, and I can see why you do this too. We do have average minutes, which is great. So some of you are looking at average. I was thinking looking at last week's because average is going to take a lot longer to shift, right? If like you had a slow start or like you haven't been getting as many minutes lately, it's going to take a while for your average to increase. But last week is like, yay, we did it. So, okay, there they all came in and we can kind of see the regions. So we've definitely highlighted those 4 classes that I think I got it right. That Grossman had 67, Dowdy had first grade at 73, so their goals was 60, and then Waite and McGee both had over 100 minutes, so they exceeded the expectations. So, well, hands-on practice for you with our minutes. So, well, actually, I'm going to go back one. If I go back here for just a second, and I go. We picked out what this classes we'd celebrate, right? But there's also some that were like, ooh, like, oh, it's not going so good. Like Miss Ross, she only has 15 minutes. And who else? Miss Green only has 25, right? So you're going to have those classrooms that it's like they're far from their expectations. So I'm going to chat about them for just a moment, or just in general when we're thinking about setting those expectations. So looking at where you are right now. This isn't anything new either to you, but I like to remember something is better than nothing, right? Like always choose something. But for teachers who are at 15 or 20 minutes to go, Miss Green, I'm going to need you to do 90 minutes next week, might be unrealistic. Maybe not. Maybe it was a weird week and there was benchmark testing or something and it's going to be no big deal. But it may seem like, going back to my analogy, like saying, you haven't been running, you've never run a mile, and now I want you to jump on a treadmill and run 10. Like that might just be a little too much. We might need to start with some small incremental goals. A suggestion is setting some school-wide goals or classroom-wide goals to say, hey, let's all try to add 10 minutes next week. That seems very doable for a teacher to say, sure, I can find 10 minutes extra. So setting those manageable goals. So you can also give, especially for my coaches in the room, giving some ideas. One of my schools, when I was a success manager, the whole school did ST Math as they're due now in the morning. So when kids came into school, every single classroom did ST Math for the first 20 minutes of the day. That's very, like, it was just built into their schedule. So that can be a really helpful tool. It doesn't have to be then, right? But like having something where it's consistent. If you set like a math block schedule to work that in so that teachers know when they're going to be doing it, whether it be during rotations or starting off your math block. Another way that we don't want it to be the main way, but is promoting home usage, right? So if teachers are really struggling to find the full minutes during class, maybe saying, hey, we want our whole school to make sure that every student has 60 minutes of ST Math use during the school day. And then we're going to try to get those last 15 or 30 minutes by promoting it at home. And you know what? I know parents are always looking for the activities they can have students do, because parents are doing the same thing where they're like, oh, screen time, right? Like, what should I be doing with that? To say, hey, if you're making dinner and you need to get the kids out of your hair for 20 minutes, this is valuable time that they could be spending on their iPad or on their Chromebook. So looking for those quality activities. And as I already mentioned, that time is such a valuable commodity, and time spent in ST Math really is time learning. It is an instructional software. It's not just practice. Students are actually learning the math as they're going through those puzzles. So that's a really important thing to remember. A couple questions that I've had district leaders or school leaders ask is, what if I don't want my teachers to do 90 minutes? What if I only really want them to be doing 60, or we really don't have that time in our schedule right now? Is that going to get any kind of an impact? And just reminding you, yeah, like the time spent in ST Math is time spent learning, but if we back up to those quartiles, if you're using less time, you might not make it as far in the content. So you might want to really think about being strategic about what students are working on. You might have less completion, but the time they do spend is still valuable. And then this is a myth that I guess I want to put out there and sort of dispel, that what about the length of a session? Sometimes folks think that, oh, I heard that it has to be at least 20 minutes and our station rotations are only 15 or something like that. And what I tell teachers when I do training is, when you're scheduling ST Math, it's best practice to give them like 20 minutes would be great, 30 minutes even better when you're doing a schedule. Because we want students to have time to get into that deep thinking and actually work through. We know that the progression of the puzzles goes from the visual to the symbolic, and work through that whole progression. But if, since all time is valuable, if you have that 10 minutes before recess, or a student finishes early, it is not going to hurt them to do a 5 or a 10-minute session. If your rotations are 15 minutes, it's not like, oh, it's not going to work if you only do 15. Like, all the time is valuable. So you can slice and dice those numbers however you want to. And we have, I didn't think to grab the research to put here, but we do have research that supports it does not matter how long the sessions are. What matters is that they're getting the minutes. Here's a live from the school, ST Math schools. Here's some schools that posted on Twitter about what they were doing to try to get their usage. On the left, they had a 60-minute award, and they put it outside the classrooms, I think is how I read this, that got to 60 minutes. And we have so many people here. If this is you, if any of these examples I have are you, you need to shout it out in the chat, because I steal these from Twitter, and I'm always hoping that there'll be a teacher that's like, oh, that's my classroom. So 60 minutes award, having that, like, celebrating teachers and classrooms that get 60 minutes. Here's another one where they had a school-wide average of 60 minutes, and they tweeted out that they reached their goal of the whole school got an average of 60 minutes. So celebrating. I'm going to put in a shameless plug here. I'm the manager of professional learning, and so I will just say it right at the beginning that yes, this is a little bit self-serving, but also I have the data to back it up. So this is some data out of Texas, that making an investment in professional learning does make an impact. And you can see that schools that invested in professional learning had usage that was almost 3 times schools that didn't. So having teachers who understand the why and are bought in and excited makes a huge difference. So today we're focusing really on that key, which is usage and how to increase usage, but your implementation can also go a lot deeper. So if you're like, Amy, we already got, like, we get 100 minutes a week. I don't know what I'm doing here. you can actually go so much deeper. You can use ST Math as a tool for mathematical discourse. We have training about writing with ST Math, using the problem solving process. So there's more than just usage. We can also go more deeply. Oh, thanks, Tracy, for the plug. All right, so set those expectations. All right, establish those routines to monitor your data. And my colleague Celia was a principal, and she said her mantra was inspect what you expect. I'd never heard that before. Maybe you have, maybe everybody else has heard that. But it's important that you're paying attention and that we have those routines in place. So we have one great resource, which is a teacher level data monitoring routine. This is a data-driven action plan. It is a protocol that is designed to be done during like a team meeting, data meeting, PLC, something like that. I'm going to have Danny put the link to this, and look, she's all over it. Put the link in the chat. And you can, actually, I'll go to this next. You also can go to help and type in action plan, help.stmath.com, type in action plan and find it that way. But this is designed to be a really quick routine, but it keeps that data at the forefront. It's hard to have time to actually go in and dig into the data. So if during those data meetings you say, okay, for the first 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to fill this out together as a team. It's collaborative. It's sort of designed to launch a PLC, but you could do it at any point. It has built-in celebration and planning. And most importantly, the whole last section is, what is the action we're going to take? So we have students who are struggling and stuck. It gives you resources and asks questions to get teachers thinking about, what action am I going to take to make sure? Oh, I noticed a bunch of students are on the same objective. Maybe I'm going to do a puzzle talk about that. And it has that built right into the action plan. So this is a fantastic resource to use if you are in charge of doing any sort of leading of data meetings or PLCs or anything like that. If you are a leader, you also need a data monitoring routine. And in the console, we have a report tab just for you. So this is only at the administrator level, so building or district administrator level. It has tons of great data for you. You can see your whole school or district data, how many puzzles that you've solved or how many objectives. You can break it down by grade level. It'll break it down if you're a district administrator by school, if you're a building administrator by class. Great, right? You have all the data. Who remembers to log in? That's the tricky part. So if you take nothing else away, maybe you will remember to, if you log into your admin account, go to my account, there is a email me a weekly school report or district report, depending on your level. And you can turn that on and you'll get that report in your inbox every week. You do not have to remember to log in that way. It will serve as your reminder to go, oh, I want to double check and see how we're doing with that usage. I want to make an impact. I got to inspect what I expect. And you can get that right there. And for time, I'm not going to like go live and show you how to do that, but Danny is going to put in the chat the link to like the how-to article to turn that on so that, you know, every Monday morning you'll come in and it'll be in your inbox and it'll remind you to take a look at that data. I know I have some principals that even like forward it out to their staff and shout out like, way to go, Miss Ross, you increased your minutes by 20 or whatever. Like they'll use that as an opportunity to celebrate. Great segue to my last point, which is to celebrate often and to celebrate wildly. We know that students and teachers, we all love to celebrate and be recognized. And so if we're going to close out my analogy, right? Every race has that medal at the end or your trophy that you get. And so having those celebrations that are built in. So I'm going to give you some examples. These are from Twitter, or some of them are pictures I took in schools when I was out in schools. So I love this one. This is usage. So at the bottom, you see minutes is equal to usage. So this school did a 100-minute club. So they said, hey, these are kiddos that are going above. Maybe we're only giving, like I said, 60 or 90 minutes in school, but they went home and they did some, or they did some before after school. They have that club. This one over here, this teacher or coach or whatever her role is, went around putting a sticker on her face for every scholar that had reached their minute goal. And we know that kids love it when we're silly, especially if you're like a principal. You know, if you dress up or do something weird, kids, they're all over that. Here in, let's see, this is, I think, North Side. They had a puzzle, like bulletin board out in their hallway where they showed how many puzzles that they had collected. So when we think about it, puzzles are going to be that productivity. So when you're ready to go a step beyond, like, okay, we just have our minutes, puzzles are what students are doing in those minutes. They're solving puzzles. And so they are counting up, they get the fish for how many puzzles that they've solved. We know that creating a little competition is a really good motivator, keeps things fresh, exciting. So at Amesbury Middle School, they pick a different competition each month. So this one happened to be from October, and they did the highest average puzzles. They called out the, looks like, students who had high average puzzles. This is another Northside school. They have a leaderboard of the highest average puzzles solved. So moving that focus to puzzles is a really great way to focus on students being productive in those minutes that they're spending. You also could celebrate percent progress or objective progress, so completing objectives. This was a school I visited actually, and they had the like objectives along the top, and then students moved their GG showing where they were through the curriculum. So it was like a visual of them actually completing their curriculum. And then this is another great one where it's like kind of a mountain climbing for percent progress. So it shows progress through their percent completion. This is my shout out to Tracy when I saw their review of their presentation about Penguin of the Week, which I loved. I thought that was so great. And they like had kids enter and like had a like random student generator to pick the Penguin of the Week for students who had, I don't remember if it was met their completion or met their goals. And then here you can see some other uses of that GG trophy to just celebrate student success and meeting goals. Principals, don't underestimate the power of publicly stating and celebrating your goals. So we have a principal on the left that's saying, hey, our goal by the end of the week is this, like, how are you doing, guys? You know, like kind of calling them out a little bit. And then the one on the right that's celebrating their completion goal and celebrating specific students. So that can be a really powerful tool as well. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We already have some celebration resources that Danny just put in the chat. And these can be done at the building or the district level. So for our district level folks, these top 5 posters are great. You can type in the top 5 schools, and then it breaks it down by each one would have like a certificate. And I've walked into schools where they have these like proudly displayed outside their office, like we won the top school of the month or the week or however you want to do it. So to find those, you can click the link in the chat that Danny put. Oh, we're at time. Okay, I'm going to be done. And you need to, if you have other ideas, send them out to at ST Math, #ST Math will retweet, and maybe you'll be in the next presentation. That is what I have for us today. And I apologize, I'm right at the time I was supposed to leave Danny 1 minute, but hopefully you had some good ideas that you gained throughout this. If you have any questions, let me know, and have a great rest of your time. Oh, thanks. And Danny also put the link to this presentation in the chat. So if you wanted to review any of it, that is there as well. Thanks, everybody.